every year I think, you know what, maybe there won't be any announcements that I actually need to talk about at this year's San Diego Comic-Con. And every year I'm wrong. So yeah, San Diego Comic-Con happened over the weekend. I did not go. I've never gone. I'm not sure I will ever go. Like that thing, I enjoy Comic-Cons, don't get me wrong, but like that thing is so huge, it kind of terrifies me. But I don't know. Maybe I'll get Jesse to let me crash at her place again and go some year. No plans to do that though. Don't expect that in future. Anyways, so I am really only going to be talking about two things: Doctor Who and Marvel. And I'm not even going to be talking that much about Marvel. I'm just going to be talking about the big announcement from Marvel. But let's pin that one for later. Because, yeah, I need to work up to that one. Let's start with Doctor Who. We had a couple of things happen. There was a panel with Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson and Russell T Davies, RDT. RTD. Damn it. Ha! If I was professional, I'd do another take. We're moving ahead. So they talked a bit about some of the stuff that was coming up. The first spinoff was officially announced. I did do a short about that before, but I'll go over it again. And there was a clip shared for the upcoming holiday special written by Stephen Moffat. There was not a ton of substantive information about the upcoming series other than those things. So let's go over them real quick. Well, first of all, let's just say all three on the panel were charming. All three are very good for these kinds of events. They seem to have a lot of fun together, and that comes across and makes it just an enjoyable panel to see, even recorded and seeing secondhand. So there's that. Let's start with the spinoff, The War of the Land and the Sea. So, or is it the sea and the land? I think it's the land and the sea. Whatever it is. This is a miniseries dealing with the Sea Devils confronting UNIT, most likely just based off who's in it, and I'll get to that in a minute. Now, I'm sure there are some people who are like, oh God, the Sea Devils, but they were so bad in that special, that Legend of the Sea Devils special. Like, actually, no, they weren't. That special is bad. They are not the problem with it, though. And honestly, I am more than a little okay with taking another crack at giving the Sea Devils a modern story that is any good, so that the overriding impression that modern era fans have is not that special. I'm totally okay with this. And as a general premise, like, yeah, I mean, that'll work. Casting wise, we have a couple of people who are coming back, who are reprising previous roles, those being Gemma Redgrave and Alexander Devrient, who are both reprising their roles for their positions within UNIT. I am more than a little nervous that this means they're going to pick up at the hinted romance between the two of them that showed up on the back end of the finale. I don't want this for a number of reasons. I'll try to keep this rant short because I could go off for a while. Short version, I don't like romantic subplots in Doctor Who anyway. It's not what I'm here for. It's never been what I'm here for, and I don't appreciate it when it shows up. That is admittedly a personal taste thing. That doesn't make them objectively bad. It does mean I don't want them. The other issue is, though, that she's his superior officer. That's not a healthy power dynamic for a romantic or especially sexual relationship. And even if you want to take it out of a military context, that's like a boss dating a subordinate. That is not a good power dynamic. It's an inherently deeply uneven one, and it's kind of inherently unethical. So I really don't like the possibility that the show's going to romanticize that kind of dynamic as a good thing. Please don't. Anyway, maybe it won't happen. It probably will. Maybe it won't happen, but I'll blow up that bridge when I get to it. Moving along, we also have a couple of people confirmed who are not new to the show, but are playing new characters. So that would be Russell Tovey, or Tuvey. Crap. I said it, I think, the wrong way when I did a short talking about this, and I remember somebody told me I said it the wrong way, but I can't remember what way I said it, so I can't remember what way's the right way now. And you know what? I'll just dub over.
Russell Tovey.
That way. That was the correct way. So he is going to be appearing, as is Gugu Mbatha-Raw, both of whom have been on Doctor Who before as Alonzo Frame. You remember Alonzo? Yeah. So Gugu Mbatha-Raw had played Martha's sister, Tish. It is confirmed on the panel by RTD that neither of them are reprising the roles that they have played previously. And this is not uncommon on Doctor Who. It actually happens shockingly often, including with major roles. It happened with Karen Gillan. It happened with Freema Agyeman. Heck, it happened with Peter Capaldi kind of twice if you want to count Torchwood. But anyway, that's kind of all we've got as far as casting goes. These are good actors. That's a good thing. The main thing that gives me hope for this is the fact that it is a mini-series. I've been pretty open about the fact that I was made nervous that they were working on spin-offs so quickly. Like, in my mind, that just reeks of the kind of, we assume this will be a hit and we're going to plow ahead regardless, mistakes that so many things have been making for the past decade or so, be they video game franchises or entertainment franchises like DC or the Dark Universe thing that never happened, et cetera, et cetera. Just moving forward with your main show and spin-offs before the first thing has even, aired, that inherently made me nervous. I'm slightly less nervous knowing it's a miniseries, meaning that they're coming and going, and this being the first one especially feels like it is a solid proof of concept that these spin-offs are going to be worth doing. So I believe they said it was a 5-part miniseries, and so this is their chance to tell a story, self-contained, and we can then judge it. Is this good? Do we want more? Without having to worry about, oh crap, are we going to get a whole nother season? Are they going to be able to fix whatever's broken about this in the next season of this frickin' spinoff? I'm actually way more interested in these kinds of self-contained stories than I am in ongoing spinoff shows. That's not to say we won't get ongoing spinoff shows. We still might. But this, to me, if we're doing spinoffs, at least at this point, this is preferable. So I'll take it. The one other thing that I did catch that I haven't seen too many people bring up when they discuss the panel or the Doctor Who stuff is that while answering, I think, a question from the audience, Gatwa actually mentioned that there was going to be more of the Pantheon in the next season.
Lots more fun, lots more adventures, a lot more monsters, continuing the Pantheon.
Yes.
I'm just so scared about spoilers. I've given away so many spoilers in my life.
The Pantheon up to this point being the Toy Maker, Maestro, and Sutekh. Now, who would it be? I don't normally do speculation. The easy guess to my mind is the Mara, who got name dropped in the episode The Legend of Ruby Sunday. That's another classic Who villain who probably could do well with an update. I've reviewed both of the Mara stories over in my my secondary channel, Break Room of Geeks. I have a playlist of classic Doctor Who reviews over there. So if you want to see my thoughts on when that character, that villain has appeared before. And honestly, since Mara was already a recurring villain back in the classic day, probably would have been more warranted to bring that one back than Sutekh. But anyway, the other named and known figure from that sort of number of name drops that happened in Legend of Ruby Sunday was the Trickster, which I suppose is also possible. I'm not as interested in that one. I'd rather see a modern update of the Mara than see the Trickster pulled in. If you don't know, the Trickster was a recurrent villain from the Adventures of Sarah Jane. Now, I didn't really like Sarah Jane Adventures, not because I thought it was bad, but it was just, it was a live action show aimed at a demographic that was decidedly younger than me, and it just didn't particularly appeal to me. I think the Trickster worked well within the context he was used. I've never wanted him ported over to the main show. Some fans have. Some people have wanted that for a while. I don't. He's gotten like a mention way back in series 4. He got an offhanded mention. So like he was canonized a while back. But I mean, not that the not that the canon status of Sarah Jane Adventures was ever really in question, but you get what I mean. Bringing it up on the main show is still a little bit of a deal when it originates in a spinoff. But I don't really have a lot of interest in the Trickster. But I don't know. It could happen. Let's not rule out the possibility it could still be a completely new character to fit into the pantheon. Because yes, we had the return of the Celestial Toymaker and Sutek, but we also had Maestro, who was a completely new thing. I'd also be very on board for that. Actually, I think I might want that more than either of the other two options. So if I'm ranking possibilities for that, something original, the Mara, the Trickster. That's sort of where my thoughts are at as far as that goes. But it does seem to indicate we're going to get some kind of godlike villain. Not necessarily as a finale villain. Keep in mind, Maestro appeared in the second episode, so this could be a mid-season thing that just happens, or it could be part of the overarching story. It could be the answer to what the heck is going on with Mrs. Flood. Who knows? I doubt that, but who knows? It's at least possible. Now, as far as the clip from the upcoming Christmas special that was shown, it looks fine. It looks cute. It's mostly an introduction to the one-off companion we're going to have, played by Nicola Coughlan, and just a little running gag with the Doctor showing up in the wrong place over and over. It's not the kind of humor I would like from a standard Doctor Who episode, but it is what I expect from a holiday special. While it's not really what I come to Doctor Who for, I have come to accept that when it does Christmas specials, this is what they do. So this seems fine. For some reason, I saw some people claiming that the Silurians look worse than they have before. I don't know where that's coming from. If you don't like the redesign, that's fine, but this is very consistent with what it's been. There's like a little coloring highlight we haven't seen before. This is fine. Oh, and for anyone who was excited about the fact that RTD was sharing a panel with one of the heads of Star Trek. Anyone who got excited for the possibility of a crossover, boy, I'm real sorry, because apparently the extent of that is a mobile game, which, first of all, the art style for Lower Decks is pretty distinct, and like just making it less unique for this is really weird to see. Second of all, why is it David Tennant? Like, you're not doing the show any favors when you make spin-off and crossover material and you're still pulling David Tennant and going by the outfit, not even the 14th Doctor, the frickin' 10th. I mean, I suppose it shouldn't be the 14th, because the 14th, it should be retired for the nature of that story, and at least what I personally liked about that story at the end of the giggle. But regardless, why is it always Tennant? People say the fans can't move on. Show really can't. Anyway, moving forward. Marvel. So there were a number of things. We found out a little bit more about Fantastic Four. We know Galactus is going to be showing up. But the big thing was, I suppose the pseudo big thing is that the Russo brothers are coming back to direct the next two Avengers movies. Now, of course, Doomsday is replacing what had previously been announced, which was Kang Dynasty, which they avoided talking about, probably rightfully so. It's basically just safe to assume that they are completely abandoning the Kang story, which, setting all legal issues with the actor Jonathan Majors aside, I think it makes sense that they didn't recast, because honestly, the storyline hadn't been going well for them anyways. I personally think the character was excellently introduced at the end of the first season of Loki, but he then had his first major appearance in Quantumania, which was a movie that was not especially well received. And then when a variant of him showed up in the second season of Loki, that was a pretty mixed response as well. And one could also argue they were undermining the idea of him as an overarching villain, the fact that he kept getting defeated, which is kind of a Saturday morning cartoon villain issue. It's not super surprising that they're just scrapping this entire angle and going with somebody else. And then we had the announcement that Doctor Doom is going to be a villain, I believe at least primarily featured in the next Avengers movie. This is prior to Secret Wars. So I think it's Avengers Doomsday and then Avengers Secret Wars. So Doom is presumably in the one previous to that. Maybe he'll get hinted and have first appearances prior to that. But they also revealed the actor playing Doctor Doom, and it's Robert Downey Jr.
New mask. Same task.
All right, so dealing with this idea in a vacuum, I think he could play the part. That is dealing with it in a vacuum. We're not in a vacuum. Let's bring the context back in. The vacuum is useless. while at least at my time of speaking, has not been officially confirmed that this is a variant of Tony Stark, an evil version of Tony Stark from another timeline, regardless of whether or not it is literally that, it's going to be treated like that by the fans. No matter how he plays this character, the fact that it's Robert Downey Jr. and it's his face means this is evil Iron Man, especially given the superficial similarities between Doctor Doom and Iron Man, i.e. a metal suit. So, on the one hand, the general notion of Doctor Doom being an evil Iron Man is not an idea that I hate. That's actually kind of an interesting way to go. It's a twist on the character that certainly could work. And it's a twist I might get on board with if we'd ever had a good untwisted version of this character appear in anything other than the comics and maybe one or two of the cartoons. Like, I love Doctor Doom. He's one of the great all-time comic book villains. He's fantastic. And there are multiple ways to approach him as a villain, to approach him as a supernatural threat, because there are times that he's really lent into the dark sorcery, to deal with him as just a massive opportunist, which is the kind of nonsense that he had a tendency to pull in things like the original Secret War, to treat him as somebody who, while he wields power with an iron fist, actually treats his people in his country kind of okay, but wants to dominate the rest of the world and doesn't care about literally anybody else, to treat him as like an honorable villain, somebody with a code of honor, or to treat as somebody who thinks he has a code of honor and use that as a justification for some horrifying stuff that he does. There's a ton of ways, angles, and ways to go about portraying him from the source material, and we have gotten none of that. We've had 3 live-action Doctor Dooms. They've all been different flavors of crap, and none of them have been true to the original. So giving us another version of Doctor Doom that, while not an uninteresting idea, is still not the original Doctor Doom. I just, like, all right. Iron Man 3, the thing with the Mandarin, that never really bugged me personally, but I have to admit part of that is I never really had any investment in the Mandarin. I knew who he was, but I never read any of the comics he appeared in. I didn't care about him. I care about Doctor Doom. So now more than ever, I get the frustration that fans of the Mandarin as a villain had with Iron Man 3. I still think that particular aspect of that movie is pretty decently handled, but I understand their frustration way more right now than I did at the time, because why can't we just get... Like, at least with the Mandarin, you had some justification that there are some really questionable aspects doing a comic-accurate version of that character. You at least had that argument to, well, we gotta mess with him in some ways. Maybe not necessarily what they did, as evidenced by the quote-unquote real Mandarin that we later got in Shang-Chi. But, like, at least there was a reason to alter him. There's no reason to not just do Doctor Doom. There's no, like, why? Why can't we just have him? And then there's the other factor, which is this is not quite, but very close to the thing that I have been dreading since the introduction of the concept of the multiverse. I said years ago, I never wanted the MCU to go multiverse. And part of the reason was, especially in the wake of something like Endgame, was that there was going to be so much call from fans, and it was going to be a real temptation for Marvel to push the button of, let's bring back characters who we were done with. Like Captain America and like Tony Stark. Their stories were done. Oh, but let's bring them back. And the other thing is, this feels like such a regressive and, frankly, a little bit of a desperation move. The MCU is not in great shape right now. Heck, the Deadpool movie, which is out, and I've seen, I have a review up in my secondary channel, the one that I mentioned already, but there is literally a joke in that about how they need to drop the multiverse stuff because it hasn't been working. So, to tie it back to Doctor Who, bringing back the directors of the last really good Avengers movies. I mean, granted, there haven't been any Avengers movies since them technically, but the guys who directed the last really good movies in this franchise, as well as bringing back the face of the franchise, reeks of what Doctor Who did, bringing back RTD and David Tennant and Catherine Tate. Now, to be fair, while I have some criticisms of some aspects, I did ultimately, despite my skepticism, really like those specials from 2023. I really liked Star Beast, Wild Blue Yonder, especially, and The Giggle. I liked all three of those, and I came to appreciate that what those stories were doing worked better or possibly could not have been done at all without bringing back a returning Doctor in some way. I appreciate now that while I still think it was a questionable and regressive move to do that, it just reeked of fan-pleasing, like, please come back, we're desperate. They still built something with that situation that couldn't have been built with other pieces. And so there was still a justification for it, ultimately in the end. Now, I think I honestly have more criticisms of season 1 than I do of those specials. Boy, next time I do a series ranking, I'm going to have to isolate those specials as their own thing, aren't I? I think I am. Sorry, mental tangent. But anyway, I am acknowledging that it is possible for good stuff to come out of this, as questionable as I find it. But that doesn't change the fact that it reeks of desperation. Look, we're bringing back the directors who made the last ones everybody liked. Look, we're bringing back the actor everybody liked. Oh, and he's a villain this time. I will grant at the very least, this is better than bringing him back literally as heroic Iron Man again. Technically, they have not confirmed that the name of this character is Tony Stark, but like I said before, whether they literally identify him as a Tony Stark variant or come up with some convoluted reason why that's technically not the case, that's still what they are presenting. Like, just by the subtext and the nature and the framing of everything, this is evil Iron Man, regardless of technicalities. And again, he's a good actor, but no matter what, this move is starting out reeking of desperation. Sometimes you can get good stuff out of a desperate play. Not often, and it doesn't say anything good about the current state of what you're doing. But I will admit it is possible we get something good out of this. But at least grant me right now some skepticism and some cynicism about that. So those are the major things I wanted to talk about. There was other stuff that went on San Diego Comic-Con, obviously, but I do not feel like going exhaustively through it, especially because those were the only things that I had any particular interest in, and the least I could do on my own channel is keep it to the stuff that I give a dang about. If you want to know what went on with Star Trek, my friend Jessie and her secondary channel, Jessie Gender After Dark, did 2 videos talking about Star Trek stuff. One pretty positive and one pointing out some issues with that clip that they shared, which I wholeheartedly agree with her take on that. Anyways, there's another place to check out if you haven't seen those videos already. But what did you think? Was there any major Comic-Con news that I didn't go over that you want to share and get my opinion on? Because honestly, like I said, I didn't even look at a full list. Or do you have thoughts on anything that I've talked about? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. They all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here. Nope, that's the break room sign out. I was thinking it was that because, like, this isn't a Saturday video. It's going to go up midweek. That's the wrong sign out. Maybe sometimes I can take a relaxed attitude around here, but that's not how I sign out here. Here, what I want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. I think it's the heat. It was too hot for this scarf. Ugh. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zumila Fulla, Goddess Elida, Trista Ashley, Oliver B., Melissa Peterson, Tarak, The Thing That Goes Going to the Anime, Gene Foray, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Linda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernambulax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperole, Dave Hall, Dwight Barish, Rosalind Bennett, Pal Barabajagal, Lucy Wood, Dorm Mayhew, and Mary G. Thank you for your support, and consider supporting me as well on Patreon.